So we will start with the open to observer session, and then we will move into executive session at some point. But first of all, we received, well, welcome everyone. We received apologies from one of the new trustees. Mike couldn't make it, but we have 11, the rest of the trustees, so 11 of us. And declaration of conflicts, anyone has to declare any conflict of interest, given the agenda? Okay, good, thank you. So I'm moving to agenda point number 2 then, which is to document the resolutions that we approved by e-vote since the meeting F3 was held, a few months ago. So, John?
We voted for that resolution.
Okay, so this is the resolution we passed, and it's there, Basically, we approved the minutes of the meeting. Okay, moving to point number 3 on the agenda, which is the program committee report by the chair of the committee, which was Hans-Peter. So, Hans-Peter, please go ahead.
Was circulated, so you should have received it, and it's in the book, I believe. So everybody can read it, and it's a quick read because it reports that there was not much to report, but one big achievement, and that's Sarah. But she will speak for herself, so I won't waste any more time.
Okay.
That's the report.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Hans-Peter. Thank you very much. Just to clarify that, a few months ago we changed the bylaws so that appointing the officers of the foundation is easier. So in that sense, you shouldn't be surprised to see me here because we had the vote in the AGM of ISOC actually, and the officers basically I was confirmed as the chair. John is still our secretary, and Richard is the treasurer. So just for clarity, and then thanks Hans-Peter for the report. We need to accept the report. First of all, any questions on the report? Comments? Okay, then I need someone to move. Pepper moves, Olga seconds, and we're gonna do this by show of hands as usual. So I'm gonna ask for yes, no, or abstain. So yes votes, no votes, abstentions. So the resolution passes unanimously, and thanks for the work you guys put on the program, because I think it's really important to, especially now that we are setting up everything, to basically be able to support our staff, in setting up the buckets and everything. Okay, so then we have the updates from the executive director, but I will get into that. We have to also reappoint the program committee because last time we appointed the program committee until today, the AGM. So I think we can do it now. Kevin?
The resolution is up there.
Oh, it's up there.
You need to add the names.
Oh, now I find it. Yeah, okay. I was looking at the wrong side of the street. Yeah, okay. So basically, yeah, the idea is that when, as you remember, when we appointed the advisory program committee, we said that we couldn't basically appoint it beyond the AGM because, those were the rules. But the idea was to appoint the set of people at the AGM and then to confirm, an appointment of, like one more cycle if everything was going fine. As we can see in Hans-Peter's report, we think that this is kind of useful. So, we believe that we should reconfirm the membership. So the membership is the same. Any questions? Okay, so somebody moving. Hans-Peter moves. Hiroshi seconds. And again, by show of hands. Yes votes? No votes? Abstentions? Glenn, I didn't get your vote. Yes, okay, so the resolution passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. And we had a discussion, Hans-Peter, in the AGM of ISOC of whether this is the best name for the committee or not. So we will actually discuss that because it was kind of confusing to some people. So we will make sure that people understand that. And just to clarify for whoever is watching the video feed, the confusion comes from the fact that some people thought this committee is advising on the actual grants or programs or anything, while in reality it's actually advising on the high level issues on, how to set things up. And this is questions that, we have gotten like quite often. So I agree with Hans-Peter that we should be crystal clear and clarify that. So that was kind of the point that we were discussing this morning or yesterday. I don't remember. Okay, thank you very much. The next point, as people probably know, we have now appointed an executive director. So we are really happy to have done that because that's kind of, we reached a point that we needed someone spending serious cycles and taking care of the things just to, go to the next step. And we have Sarah here. So, again, we have welcomed you already, but, let me stress that. And we're going to hear from her, what's basically going on, your plans, etc. So the floor is yours.
Have to learn how to turn on the mic, which I've now done. Okay, so first of all, I want to say I'm extremely excited to be here, and I'm really excited about working with every one of you, as well as anybody who's tuned in. This is an amazing opportunity. My background is all nonprofit, all foundations, all developing world work, and to bring all this together to help further the connectivity and to help people around the world in this capacity is just overwhelming for me in a wonderful way. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm here today to tell you what I've been doing in 4 weeks. I've been here 4 weeks. We've been busy. There's a lot to do. And I must acknowledge right up front that I know everyone is eager, eager to see this foundation come off the ground. And please count me among you. So we are going to do all we can to get things started quickly. We've actually made quite a bit of progress in 4 weeks. So let's go ahead and go to the first slide. What we're going to do today is talk about the past 4 weeks' activities. I do have a staffing plan I'd like to present to you, as well as an update on Beyond the Nets. For those who are not familiar, Beyond the Nets is in fact moving into the foundation and has thus become a foundation focus. And because it exists and it has a lot of history, I have been spending quite a bit of time to understand it and the direction in which it's going and how it will fit in with the mission that we have. Additionally, when we talk about the Beyond the Net, we're not just going to talk about the program, but there was apparently a discussion about selection committee for medium and large size grants. So I'm going to want to go over that with y'all. Additionally, we want to talk about selection committees for other grants. As you all know, there's 5 different program areas. So we have a selection committee process for the Beyond the Net, but so too must we have a selection committee process for the other 4 areas. I also want to talk with you about the grant review approval management system and process that I've developed. And then we'll do a communications update. I have requests for you, which I could say safely will every single time we get together, because I count on you and your expertise and your connections to this wonderful world. And then we'll talk about next steps. Next slide, please. So here I am running. For those of you who know, I'm pretty much into athletics, and so I figure often running was appropriate for the first month. What have I done? Well, there is a company known as Bridgespan. I don't think there's a person in this room that's not familiar with their work. It was very impressive. Coming from my background, I was excited to see what Sandy handed to me with lots of glee on her face was like a 4-inch binder. She was so ready to unload that, and I was so ready to take it on. I have read it several times. I have a lot of questions. I've had several calls with them. We have some more coming up. We have more meetings coming up, but I would say overall, I felt very good about what I saw in that report. Again, as I mentioned up front, developed a staffing plan. Reviewed your grants management system, Member Nova. So we're going to be talking about that a bit later. I also, as I mentioned, spent some time with Beyond the Net. And then I've been very busy talking. I think I've been on the phone with almost every one of you in this room. And if not, I'm sure we're on calendars, because the one-on-one is extremely important to me to hear from each one of you. I was fortunate to be able to speak with Gonzalo very early on. I think it was my 2nd day or something, which was wonderful because it gave me a good perspective from the board. And I've also been reaching out to every single member of the executive team that reports to Andrew. I was fortunate in that they had a meeting the 2nd week, Andrew, I think, that I was on board. So I was able to see them all in person. Also during that same week, PIR had a board meeting, so I was able to meet some of them. Then I came here to IETF, and I have had some meetings with folks. I've talked with some people on the phone at the suggestion of some of you. Henning I spoke with. I met with Jason Goodliving. I love that last name. I'm just continuing to schedule meetings with different foundations so that you're clear that it's not just that I'm soliciting information from us, from our family, but from the family to which we're connected, and even in some cases, you know, just people that you think are good for me to speak with. So we'll be talking some more about that. Next slide, please. So here's the staffing plan. I'm very used to getting up and pointing at slides, but I know I need to stay seated. So I'm just going to do the best I can from here. If you look on the far left of the slide, you'll see obviously this board is very critical to the success of the foundation. Program Advisory Committee, which as we discussed, Hans Peter maybe in fact named something else. Internet Society Chief Executive or Officer, so that's Andrew. So you all are very involved in everything in which I'll be involved. So there's me, an executive assistant on the side. Over on the far left also in the blue boxes, you'll see that the Internet Society is providing quite a bit of functional support, which I am very blessed to know is there. They're providing HR support, technical support in the form of IT. The finance team is helping out, the communications team is helping out, and then so too is HR. And we've made some progress in HR, which I'll report on shortly. There are 5 new positions I am proposing. Yeah, I'm sorry if it's real small. If you want to stand up, follow Richard's lead, please feel free. The first, technical and administrative grants manager. I feel it's critical that we have a very smart, very savvy technical person in charge of tracking everything that we do, both inputs and outputs. Outcomes actually impact key KPIs. Who gets to look at what? So a grants management system and a person behind it who really knows what they're doing. And you can see I've put bullet points under each, and of course you'll get copies of this deck. The idea is to have 2 different program officers, one to oversee the innovation and research grants, and one to oversee the chapters, which of course is beyond the net, as well as the community capacity building. Then we need absolutely a monitoring and evaluation director, and we have to have somebody in communications. Now, as I mentioned early on, at this point, communications is helping me quite a bit. I've spent a lot of time on the phone with James, who's just terrific, and his team. So they'll continue to support the foundation, but at some point we need to have our own. We have a grants program manager already in place, Ilda, who you all are familiar with. She lives in Geneva, and she's been working beyond the net. So she'll continue to do that, but in the long run, I see her reporting to the program officers, and she's focused specifically on chapter work. So I know this is a lot to take in. I do want to mention before I move on, and we can stop at any point with questions if you have them, but the priority hires for me are the tech and admin grant person. We've got to get a really good, solid system that works for us. Whether we're shaping something we have or getting something new, we'll discuss that in more detail later. But we have to know what's going out and what's coming in and how we're monitoring it. And it has to match up with the criteria that we are going to be developing. That to me is critical, absolutely critical, a priority. Then the second priority hire I am looking at is the chapter and community capacity building. Why? Well, we already have a chapter program in place, but so too from all the conversations in which I've been involved, I've learned that the capacity building, community capacity building is really high on a lot of people's lists. It's not that research and innovation is not important, my goodness, of course it is. But it is really what's going on in the community and how we can build capacity. We heard some of the stories just today from the North American, from the Canadians, and I've heard a lot of stories about where those are. And if you look at the things we're doing with community networks, other programs that Jane's doing, there clearly is a lot on which we can build. So I felt it was really important for us to be looking for that person. We will, of course, bring in the other positions, but HR told me, don't you dare ask me to hire 5 people at one time, because all any of us will be doing is looking at resumes. So we wanted to prioritize, and we do have, in fact, a plan. We'll be launching next week. We'll be posting these jobs. I've picked some specific lists that I feel are important from my background in international development and philanthropy. I want to be sure this person has the type of passion that we all have and that I've been working with for my entire career. So passion is one of the EQ pieces that we'll be looking for in addition to the skill set. So we'll be launching those. Also Indeed and the others that you're used to, but I did want to mention that we're going to broaden it a bit, maybe perhaps DevX and Society for International Development as well. So those will be posted. So maybe I'll pause just real quickly if there are any questions, or I can keep going.
Any
okay?
questions so far on the structure? Okay, yes, please.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about what I've done and we talked about the staffing plan. Number 3 to talk about is Beyond the Net. I wanted to point out to you that this year we launched the Small Grants Program in April. In the past, we've launched a bit earlier, but due to the new system coming in with Member Nova and some other things, it was delayed a bit. No problem. We're starting to get applications. We have 7 right now. It's a little low, but it's still early. As you can see in the table I put together at the bottom, the application deadline for smalls is not until the 30th of October, so we're okay. I'm not worried. But I will say we've got a good amount of money to give away, and I'd really like to be making a difference around the world. So I'm looking for applications. The medium and large grant program was just launched a few weeks ago, just starting to get some applications. And as I mentioned, we will talk about the selection committee. And just for those of you who may not be familiar, the small grants are for one current year, during the current year. As I mentioned, we have 7. The medium to large tend to be 1 to 2 year programs. They're obviously more, they're 15 to 30,000. The small grants tend to be more around the 3,500 or less level. And the medium and large grants are due August 19th. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the selection committee. I worked actually with Andre on this as he was involved with the discussion that y'all had in April. So apparently what you had discussed was making sure that we had a selection committee, again, for Beyond the Net, medium and large grants selection committee. That first we had a call for interest, that we had a transparent process for the staff regional bureau directors to help choose the selection committee members, that we would cap the committee at 7, 1 from SIG, 1 from regional representatives, and that we would enter a stipend. So the 4 bullets on the left were the things to which the committee agreed last time. So we worked on that. We have in fact put out a call for interest. We've gotten interest. I think we received somewhere around 15, maybe 16 applications. 6 have been selected. We are still searching for 1 more. Christine, who is monitoring the applications, is on leave this week, and I'm hoping to get a report on that next week to see about the 7th. And then the agreed upon amount was a $500 stipend once the completion of the duties occurred. So that's the selection committee for medium and large Beyond the Net grants. So different than what we'd like to do for the other programs. Next slide, please. So the other programs, if you look at the bottom, I don't want anyone to think I did not remember that disaster relief was on the list. It's on the list, and for obvious reasons, very near and dear to my heart. For those who don't know, I spent 10 years at the American Red Cross, and disaster relief has been something that's been part of my life for a long time. And I want to continue that, but I want to come back to that. For the selection committee for the community capacity building, I have talked with Gonzalo and several other board members about the idea of putting together a pool of experts, like maybe 20 or 25. And this is something we'll talk about at the end of the meeting, because I really, really need your help in selecting the proper people. From that pool, we would say, okay, so here we have X number of grants, and I'm going to talk soon about how we're going to process this whole grant review and award process, but have people from that pool actually be assigned to review certain grants based on their areas of expertise. So we're not going to get somebody with a research background, maybe something on capacity building or vice versa. And I want them to be sure to be global and regional. So we have people who represent the world, right? That's important, but we also want to be sure that we've got 6 regions, and we want to be sure that we're considering those different areas as well. When I talked with Bridgespan, they had suggested an advisory panel for research and innovation. And I gave that some thought. At first, I was not sure, do we really need that? I think we do, and here's why. The field of research and innovation is still a little bit undefined. Capacity building is a little easier to define. We've got a lot of examples of that. But maybe pulling together an advisory committee of people just in that area of innovation and research could help us as a group shape exactly what it is that we're looking for. And one of the things also Bridgespan had talked about was maybe doing that test and learn and adapt approach, where maybe we take some experimental type things in research innovation, we do it a little bit differently. But ultimately, the point is, everybody, we need to have a panel who selects our grantees who are objective Okay, so I am not recommending participation on the selection committees for staff or board members. I think having someone like Olaf or Sally as an advisory person on the research and innovation, yeah, that's a good idea. But in general, we've talked about this from the beginning of this meeting, and I've heard it before. From a perception standpoint, it needs to be clear that this organization, this foundation, is being objective in the selection of the money that we're giving away. So I feel it's really important that we have a really good, credible view, group of experts out there making the decisions. Now, I will be looking at the strategy of the foundation. I will have in my head what the overall strategy should be. So I'm not suggesting I'm making the decision, but the reason I put myself in there, and then also the program officer for the advisory committee, is because we could select grants, but somebody, and I think it needs to be me, has to step back and say, okay, so these are all the grants that we want to move forward on. How do they fit with our strategy? Now, we'll look at that, of course, before we even make the package selection, but I want to look at it one more time before we announce them and put it out in public. I think some of you know I have a communications background, and I lead to stick with my key messages, and if we are this, this, and this, we need to be able to say this grant supports that. Okay, we need to be sure that we're clear about the strategic value of the money that we are giving. Next slide, please. So what does the review, award, and management process look like? So I took a stab at putting this together. Next slide, please. Again, I know I'm not one who likes a lot of words on slides, but these will be good as handouts. If you want to stand up and stretch, get some water, and look at the words, I can just take you through it. The most important foundation piece, of course, is to identify the list of who we want to consider our pool. For those who were involved in the interviewing process with me, one of the things that we talked about was how do we identify the right applicant pool.
Maybe
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just one thing, logistically, you guys can follow the slides on the Zoom link that we were using before for the AGM. And for the next time, I see that we haven't posted this link on the foundations page. So I think that would be confusing for people. So let's try to do it on the foundations webpage next time as well, so that everybody can follow that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So I won't take you through all the words, but as you all know, one of the things is the foundation grants are to go to 501c3s, NGOs, with the exception of the chapter grants, which are the Beyond the Net, which are going to continue because not all of our chapters, as we know, have that status. And then each one, I'm going to establish a timetable for what people can expect, when things are due, when they'll get things back, et cetera. Call goes out, applicants are submitted and put into our system. We take a look, the technical admin person and the PO to whom I referred earlier, we'll take a look at the first group and screen and shortlist them. Then the shortlist goes to the subcommittee of the selection committee that I referred to earlier. So again, if the package is capacity building, we've identified person A, B, C, and D to look at those. Here's the package pre-screen. We know these guys have a bank account. We know they meet certain criteria. Then it goes up to the committee and they make the selection. Then again, as I mentioned, I would like to have a look for the strategic alignment just one final time before announcement, and then we disperse the grants with very clear guidance on how everything is to be used. And then there are a couple of things ongoing. I want to make sure that we're constantly getting the reports that we need, that people are meeting milestones. And that doesn't mean you have to make impact in 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes 2 years, but there will be in one of our requirements milestones for things people should be reaching. Also, we'll be making sure that our process is working. I mean, this is brand new. It's all going to be new. We're going to be checking back and making sure that people are coming and meeting the things that we have asked for, and the screening process is working and all of that sort of thing. Next slide, please. Okay, for communications, as I mentioned, there's been quite a bit going on. It's been as a result of James' team. They've been really wonderful. I just wanted to take you, Kevin, next slide, to see the website. So I think everybody here knows that the site was launched a few months ago, and if we could just click on that, I just want to have a look for everybody to see what's on that site. I'm sure you've been there. Maybe every day you go there like I do, but just in case. Okay. Are we going to get that to go? Okay, so just if you look at the the navigation across the top, you'll see home, about, grant programs, news, stories, careers. So Kevin, if you could click on stories, this is one piece I think that's very important to point out. If you scroll down, you'll see that we do have someone capturing stories of what's happening with some of our programs. I think that's critically important. It helps to shape not just we are, our vision, but it also helps to get other potential grantees an understanding of what it is that we're looking for. We also, Kevin, if you want to go back to the nav up to the top, I'm sorry, careers. Right now, if you look on there, scroll down, please. It says there are no open positions at this time, but that's not true. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be filling that in with 2 people next week. We're going to be looking for our technical and administrative grants manager, and we're going to be looking for our program officers for program officer for chapter and capacity building. So those 2 positions will be posted as well as at the other spots that I talked. So we can go back to the slide. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so just to note too that we are tracking the metrics to see how we're doing. The traffic has been going up. That's a weekly report that I've asked from Dan York to give me, so you can see that we are heading in the right direction, which is always nice. We've established some social channels, but not all. We're in the process of developing that. As everybody knows, social channels are really good when you have content. So we need to be sure that we have a lot of things to share, and so we'll be doing that. And then just one other point, next slide, please. We have worked with Yoko Co., which is the name of the company that designed the website, and asked them to please provide translations in both French and Spanish for our website. I talked or interacted this morning and yesterday with Stacy at Yoko, and she's provided me some screenshots of what the translation pages will look like. They were supposed to go up, quite honestly, a little bit earlier. They haven't yet. I can ping anybody who's interested to let you know, just because I know we talked, Olga, yesterday. There was some discussion about translations and how they look. So certainly having a closer look, I'm welcome to, or you're all welcome to do. Next slide, please. Okay, so I now have questions for you and favors to ask, but again, I'll take an exhale, as we say, and ask if there are any questions on all that stuff I just dumped at you guys. Yes, Olga.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for your presentation. I have a doubt about the selection committee. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it published, but maybe I missed something and I cannot find where it was published, if it in the Internet Society website or the foundation website, maybe.
We've not published it, no.
Oh, okay, so how did you get the candidates?
So I don't have any candidates. What I'm hoping to do at this board meeting is inspire every one of you in this room, and then the people with whom I meet beyond this meeting to help provide me with some names and ideas.
So maybe I misunderstood. I understood that you had only one left position.
Oh, okay. So here's the difference. So Beyond the Net, which already exists, has a selection committee of 6 people. Those names came from the regional bureau directors, and they were submitted and did applications. And I actually have the names of the 6 people who've accepted, but they represent the 6 different regions. So we have 1 from each region, again, just for Beyond the Net. It's not for the broader foundation grants. So is that helpful?
As far as I remember, I haven't seen that call. So maybe it's the same people that was from before, or it was renewed by the regional bureaus?
So the call went out actually before I started, and what I found when I got here was that applications were being made and that there was a selection made, I think over the past maybe week. Yeah, so it's very recent. Yes. Other questions? Go ahead.
No, just an answer. The call went out sometime in April on chapters list, for example, and was repeated at least in Europe from the European Bureau to all European chapters again to find candidates. I'm not sure about South America.
Yeah, so that is a separate one. In terms of the bigger foundation selection committee, that's where I'm looking for help. Yes. Other questions?
More questions? Yeah, Hans-Peter.
Yes.
Now a question. It's a question to you and Andrew, and I assume you both have talked about it. Before you post your open positions to the outside, was there any talk about moving additional or more people from inside because tasks were moved? Or, I'm sure you did.
So there weren't any active programs that just moved over except for Beyond the Net, which is, and so Ilda did move there. My expectation when we talked about this before, and I don't know what Sarah thinks because we haven't talked about it since, but my expectation in the past was that we would simply post them like normal, and if there were internal candidates who wanted to apply for them, we would look at that. But that was anyway what I thought we were going to do.
And that's what HR confirmed. Yes. I met with Alan and Maggie and Jeanette to get the right way to do this. Yeah. So certainly welcome internal candidates. Absolutely. Okay. So if you wouldn't mind, the next slide, please. So I'm looking for guidance, not this afternoon, not tomorrow, but I'm asking each of you. As you all know, I'm new to the technical community. I can certainly locate people in rural Africa who are doing healthcare work, but I'm looking for people who have the expertise in the type of work that we do and that we want to continue to do and grow throughout the world to make as many lives better as possible. So who should be on our panel of experts for community capacity, for research, and for innovation? Since we are going to move forward with the concept of an advisory panel, who might those people be? Again, focus on research, focus on innovation, as opposed to capacity building and chapter work. And who do you think would be good for me to talk to about potential applicants? I know we talked about this earlier. In fact, I think this again was part of the North America presentation. I know that there are some that come to us, and that's great, and I'm happy we should look at those. But I also know that there are some that I want to know about that may not know that I'm here to talk to. And you all may have the suggestions. There may be something in Argentina, for example, that you feel is really important for me to learn about. Maybe something in any one of the countries in which you live, but more importantly, beyond where you live, where you work, and the people who you know. One of the things I've discovered in talking with every one of you is you really are so ingrained in a wonderful way in this industry, and you know so many people, you know what's going on out there, and I could definitely use some guidance. And then I also have found, as I mentioned, for the meetings, the IETF meeting was really beneficial for me to have a chance to interact with folks from the industry. There seemed to be, I think I'm right, a meeting a week in the internet world, maybe. There are a lot of them, and I can't go to all of them, and they're not all really valuable for me to go to. So Andrew and I spoke about this, and he just suggested I put it out there. I know, of course, ICANN, there's IGF. I know there are a lot of different places where I could perhaps make some good connections. And the combination, one is to explain what it is we're doing and what it is we are looking for, and happy to explain the process and how things work. But the other thing is just for me to get familiar so that when we start to look at applicants and such, I'm going to have a better idea of the landscape. I really need to understand the landscape better than I do today. So that's my big ask for the board.
Yeah.
I certainly believe that together we can come up with a really great team, and I'm really looking forward to meeting more people in the industry.
Okay, so I have Hans-Peter and Pepper.
Okay.
Just a quick first shot which came to my mind
Yes.
listening to you. What about Hall of Fame? Hall of Fame is in September.
Yeah,
I'm sure some people there would be nice candidates to help selecting valuable things around the internet. Not everybody, but at least some of them.
Thank you.
Pepper?
I guess part of it, the question on the advisory committee.
Mm-hmm.
From what you described, it sounds to me a little bit like what we were doing prior to you being hired, not to look at specific grants. Right? That's not the role of the advisory committee. I think because you have a selection committee, but rather trying to help you frame or help, how do we even because just what you said, we haven't actually completely thought through what an innovation grant means, what a research grant means. So it's really a continuation of the discussion that we had as a foundation board, and that we had as whatever the group was that we were as a subset of the board, helping frame right what we're looking for. We're
That's
pretty
correct.
we figured that out, right, on going forward on Beyond the Net.
Yes, that's
We
correct.
figured that out pretty much on the community building and so on, but we're still on the innovation research. Still, that's a work in progress. So I see that actually as an extension of the existing work, in that the advisory board, if successful, should be temporary, right? And be able to
Yes.
step back once you help you define, because it should not be part of the selection process.
Absolutely.
If that's correct, one suggestion would be to, use a subset of what we have been doing, and maybe add, if there's 3 people, 2 from this group that had already been part of those discussions, and then 1 person from outside, who would, again, but it has to be very clear when that this is not about picking and choosing grant projects.
You're exactly
Right.
correct.
And I think this is something that we were very careful about, because we didn't want people to think, oh, we were making selections. So
That's
we're very
correct.
clear. We're not. It's going to be a completely separate process. I think it's useful, or we could just continue the group that was a subset of the board to help you define that. But I think it'd be useful if you're looking at, 2 of us plus somebody else.
Yes.
It has to be absolutely clear, and it be finite, and that this advisory group, part of the definition of success is disappearing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, I'm in the same exact place, Pepper, as you are. That's exactly how I was thinking about it. So how to move forward, I would look to you for guidance on what's been done and how we might I do think the idea of expanding it a bit is a good idea, and perhaps bringing, as I mentioned, Sally and Olaf into it as well. So, or maybe they're already part of it.
Yeah. So we had this discussion before, I think, when Olga and I were talking. And we need to make sure that basically everybody understands that, hey, we are doing this. So if I don't want anyone that would like to volunteer not to know this information. And I understood from Hans-Peter that so far we've been communicating quite well using the channels. So we should continue doing that. But I agree that proactively we should actually reach out and tap some shoulders, because some people may be interested and they may have missed this. And again, what Pepper said, which was what we were saying before, that confusion is out there, that people thought we were actually the selection committee. So I don't care if it takes to change the name of the committee or I don't know, to explain once more. But anyway, the clearer the better. That's I think we all agree with that.
And what's really important is, and I believe this from the day I started in my career, is that we all have to get on the same page and we have to repeat the same messages. So whatever somebody hears from Andrew should be the same thing that they hear from me, from Glenn, from anybody, from the whole group. And so developing key messages and responding to some of the concerns and the perceptions that are out there, I feel is really important. Andrew, do you want to add anything to any of that?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. Just felt like it was important to ask. Okay. So the next slide, or next steps, and next slide, please. Okay. So obviously the recruitment is going to continue. Staffing plan you've seen. I do hope to get the other positions moving shortly. Then the panel of experts about which we spoke, as well as the advisory panel noted in the perspective that Pepper has just provided. I want to do a communications plan. What we're doing right now is very tactical. There's no strategy behind it yet. That's not a criticism, it's an observation, and it's because we need one. And so I am hoping to bring in a director to do that. I personally, because of my experience, may take a stab at it ahead just to get a little bit of a jump start. And then, of course, as we were discussing, continuing to engage with the community. I've put together a list of criteria. It's really in the weeds right now, and I thought about presenting it, and then I thought, no, I'm going to tighten it up a little bit before I share, so you guys can see what I'm thinking about for that. Then when do we think we can put some call for applications? Again, back to the point that I made at the beginning of my discussion. I'm eager too. I know you're all eager. A lot of people are eager to see us start giving some money away. But we need to get our systems in a row, and then we'll get that out there. And then finally, the piece here that I wanted to speak about before I close for the open session is the disaster. I've renamed it. As I said, it's really more than just relief. I see the disaster area as 4 different areas: reconnecting communities, helping relief organizations connect, but then so too, we need to be looking at enhancing internet resilience, and we need to be thinking about how to build back better. So that's a bigger plate than just being there right after the Mozambique's second cyclone, for example. I was starting a project in Mozambique when that hit, so I'm really familiar with the impact. That, of course, is important, but I do believe there's a bigger role for the foundation to play when it comes to internet, to disaster, as I said, related grants. So I'm going to hold that one in my lap for right now. Ultimately, I do believe we could put a staff person. I don't know if it would be a full-time position or not, but I think right now for me, it's just as easy for me to kind of keep an eye on it, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah. And when we were defining the buckets, I mean, they are not cast in stone like it's, God given. I mean, if you have some ideas or scope questions, we can always do that. I think it was Waleed that was proposing that we create disaster at some point. we were joking about that in a retreat last year. So in that, I mean, about that particular bucket, we have had scope discussions as well. So when you get more into the details, getting your opinion would be also great. So that type of feedback is welcome.
Yeah, and I would say thank you for raising that. I thought the buckets that you came up with were great. I mean, I remember talking about them again during the interview process. I believe that the 5 are good. One's already established. We got 4 more to go. But I think in terms of the broad definitions, they work for me, and they cover all the things I believe we should get involved in. It's just a question in some cases of getting a little bit tighter or a lot tighter on some of the definitions.
Exactly, and also prioritize across buckets and everything. So yeah, all that, it's good that you give it some thought, and we are happy to discuss. Walid.
So you put me on the spot. Yeah, I mean, eventually, when you think today is different than years ago. Years ago, you'd think of crisis as I'm managing food, water, etc. But today, information is on top of everything, and so if you can't get information out, so I felt that it was necessary to bring the aspect of.
It's unfortunately something that we will continue to see, and vulnerable populations are disproportionately affected by natural disasters. So I know this for a fact, and so I, in a million years, would not want to address this. I think it's really important. It's just a definition of how.
Good.
So before we go into close, we have some other things to talk about. I'm happy to answer any other questions. I hope we provided you with what you were hoping to.
Was this the last slide?
That's the last slide. Oh, wait, there's a thank you.
Yeah.
Ready? Here it goes. There.
Yeah.
There's a thank you.
I see all presenters are trying to confuse me with, this. I think it was Andrew that inserted several thank you slides in the middle of the day.
Should I have done that, Andrew?
I'm just really thankful.
I know.
Okay, I have to tell you, when I sent the presentation to Andrew to just say, did I cover what they're anticipating? He writes me back, LMTG. So I stared at it and stared at it and stared. I thought, okay, I know I'm in this acronym community. Looks good to me.
Yeah.
So he didn't ask for more thank yous.
I was having some discussions about acronyms with Kevin as well at some point. So those are fun. Okay, excellent. But no, thanks a lot. I think it's it was a great presentation, a lot of new material. Unfortunately, we got everything very late, like a few hours ago. So in that sense, we will need some time to process it. So we cannot give definite answers now. I mean, we will need to make more educated discussions and decisions. But anyway, it's good input, with the presentation. And do we have any additional questions at this point? Yes, Mike.
So my question is just, do you, in terms of seeking resources and advisors, whether they're on a committee or not, are you interested in people in different, people who are actually on the ground in different regions who also are interested in internet in the range of internet issues that we take up, because I know a ton of them. And I don't know if you want them or what we would do with them if you had my Rolodex. Remember Rolodexes?
I do. I had one. I know exactly what they look like. Yep, hated them. But anyway, the answer to your question is yes. I would like to get, without making commitments, I'd like to find out what the different resources are that are out there. I feel like the range of projects we're going to be looking at is going to be pretty broad. And I think I need to know, and maybe we even phase people in and out. I'm not sure, Mike, how exactly we might do that, but I feel like right now for me, the more people I talk to, the better, and then shape and then make a recommendation to you all about how I feel that the committee could be put together.
Right. So the reason the root of this question is that when I was working for Internews, we had, Internews is an older organization than much of the internet. So one of the things that we had to do when we were talking about internet policy at Internews was explaining to people who were doing more traditional development and aid roles why internet connectivity may actually potentiate solutions in other areas like distribution of water or medicine or food or agricultural knowledge or whatever the issue is. It turns out that I have this network of people, so I'm happy to share.
I appreciate that. That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Comments?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So I think, yeah, now we can go into AOB, close the meeting, and then continue.
Right. We just have interested staff on the call right now.
Okay.
So if you want, I can just, rather than take time to switch Zoom rooms, and
right,
I can just lock the session.
Yes, let's do that. Okay, so with that, before you do that, yes. Yeah, okay, but let me go through the open, any other business, close the meeting, and yeah. But you are first in the queue. So any other business? Okay, seeing none, I move to adjourn. Thank you.